God, may I please invite and we're doing this together, which is equally quite unusual, other than being in a studio. So we're going to get a little bit cozy. Jaff, can you keep us right? Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, yes, perfectly.
Wonderful. Okay, so as I've mentioned, we've got a wonderful guest joining us, coming back to the greatest region, arguably, in the UK, the north of England, with our beautiful people and our wonderful places. I'm not going to introduce Colonel Peter, because there's probably no better person than Colonel Peter himself to say who he is, what he does, and equally why he does it. So over to you, please, Colonel Peter.
Well, Amal, thank you very much, and it's good to see you today, and good to speak to everyone about life here in Catterick Garrison. But my name is Peter Stitt. I've been in the army for nearly 30 years now. I really enjoy life up here in this part of the world, and so I've chosen a number of postings that have brought me back to Catterick and North Yorkshire. And I've got a regimental heritage and so on up in Newcastle. My daughter is a student up there. So I do really enjoy this part of the world. The reason that Amar has come down to Catterick Garrison today is that today there's in fact, there are two new formations, army formations, that are forming up today. So starting their existence today. And one of them I run. It's called Headquarters North. And it's a part of the army that looks after all of the enabling and supporting facilities and services for the army across the north of England. And that's quite a wide remit. And it means that, and actually, because it's a wide remit, the army does a great thing of giving me about 17 sides of bullet points about what it's supposed to mean. So I'll try and cut it down to what I think it means. And I think the purpose of my headquarters is to make the military community in the north the best it can be. And in doing that, we connect to some really fantastic organizations and people who we've been really grateful for their support up until now. And hopefully through my headquarters, we can continue to bring them together and focus all that they do. So collectively, that community is the best it can be. Because, of course, what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that our soldiers, when they are asked to, they're in the very best state they can be to go and defeat the king's enemies where that might be required. And that's really the reason why we do all this.
Amazing. Sorry, Colonel Peter, I was just going to say, and your why? Why did you get involved? When did you sign up? Not that long ago, obviously.
So, originally,
yeah.
Wow. So I joined up first in 1991 and served in the army for a little while, and then went off to university, and then came back to the army in 1994. So yeah, I've been here for a while.
Amazing. And why? Why did you sign up?
So I would say that the army offers a unique challenge, and all of us are adrenaline junkies in our own way. And in the army, there are things that just I found myself being attracted by in terms of travel and a bit of adventure and the physical activity side and the teamship and the identity that provides and all those sort of things. So that attracted me into the army, and if I'm honest, I've enjoyed it since then, and I haven't really found a reason why I'd want to leave. And I now find myself actually in the last job that I'll have in the army, because I'll need to retire in 2.5 years' time. And I think in this job, I've got a real opportunity just to hopefully, provide something back to that military community and leave it in a better state.
Brilliant. Yeah, and you're right. All too often, Colonel Peter, we don't necessarily recognize or appreciate all of the value that armed forces opportunities bring. So being part of a community, quite a unique community, adventure, challenge, this constant and consistent opportunity to grow, push yourself out of boundaries. Highlights? What would you say your highlights are?
Well, I would say that the jobs that I've enjoyed the most have been those that involve training.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time here in Catterick in something called the Infantry Training Centre, where we would take soldiers who've just been recruited and therefore know nothing about the army. And over a period of 6 months, we inculcate in them the skills they need and the understanding of what it is that they're what's at the heart of soldiering, that identity and that pride in what you're doing, and the sense that you're serving the nation, all those sort of things. And I really enjoyed that because you could just see individuals grow and develop in front of your eyes. And the skills they developed, I have no doubt, are really valuable life skills. And the confidence they developed was just incredible to see. And it just gives real satisfaction. It gives a real insight into leadership, I have to say.
Brilliant. Excellent. So coming back to your role here now, sounds really interesting, equally transformative. Would that be an accurate type of description to what's going on, HQ North, as opposed to, I believe, it might have been split into different areas of the country? Is that right?
Yeah. So broadly, yeah. I mean, my headquarters North is evolving from a slightly smaller organisation beforehand, and we're effectively joining an organisation that looked after the Northeast with one that looked after the Northwest. So we've kind of doubled in size, and we now look after all of that North region. One of the things which really interests me about this is, again, I've been in the army for 30 years. I've studied stuff about military things, and I believe quite passionately that the army reflects the society it was drawn from. And therefore, you have to have connections to make that relationship worthwhile. So I really enjoyed the opportunity over the next few years to develop those connections and just make sure that society in the North is aware of what the army does, what our issues are, and so on. And we similarly can represent the North within the army. I mean, I think the North should be remarkably proud that, depending on which number you want to look at, the North accounts for around about somewhere over 20% of the UK's population. And it also provides over 30% of the recruits to the army. And that's a staggering level of support that I think the North should be really proud of. And that's the kind of story I want to tell, both in the army and back to society in the North of England.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So here's Jaff. Hello, Jaff.
Hi, Jaff.
Jaff's an award-winning restaurateur. He's got the best restaurants, arguably. If you ask Gordon Ramsay, he'll say it's his favorite restaurant in the world. And when Gordon Ramsay had won an award in America, he was asked, "What would you do now to celebrate?" And he said, "I'll jump on a helicopter to go to Jaff's restaurant."
Also,
so. And the reason why I'm keen to bring Jaff in here is also because he's an incredibly good friend, but he's also the co-host of this radio show. But fundamentally, I think what I'm picking up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Colonel Peter, but is that opportunity to bring communities, employers, people together through what you're doing here. And Jaff and I, just before the show started, we're talking about skills and the challenges employers are facing in recruiting good quality people. Now, an immediate opportunity in the pipeline of good quality people is from our armed forces, isn't it? As in veterans, people sort of coming out of the armed forces.
So I couldn't agree more, and I might just expand that slightly. So you've absolutely touched on one area of very skilled individuals who are those that are coming out of the army, and that could be after 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and they do have skills. And you might find that some of those individuals struggle to translate those into sort of a civilian skill set, but nonetheless they have undoubted skills, especially and self-reliance and so on. So I would absolutely look to work. There are organisations we work with, such as the Forces Employment Charity and so on, to try to make sure that we can connect employers with people that are exiting the forces with that skill set. If I might just broaden your point, though, Anna, there is another area of parts of our military community that we help, and those are our cadets.
Right.
And in the north of England, we've got 15,000 cadets in various sort of cadet forces. And those are teenagers who, through taking part in activities and outward boundy type activities, they develop a skill set which I think is really pertinent to the workplace.
Yeah.
These are things like self-reliance and confidence and teamship and leadership and all those sort of bits and pieces. And again, we work with the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association with employers to make sure that employers realise that actually cadets might be quite a worthwhile pool from which to pull in to the workforce some very well-developed youngsters. Again, that's an area of our work that I'd like to highlight.
And it's a great point. I suppose selfishly, with my relationship with the reserves, Colonel Peter, our reserves offer something quite unique as well. They are trained up to the same exacting standards as our regulars, get the similar type of opportunities, but they're able to maintain their own profession or career in whatever discipline they want. So that in itself offers significant opportunities for employers like Jaff, who's scaling. Jaff, tell us a little bit more about your operations and things like
I
that.
might just before that, the question that I would have had for Colonel Peter, and I think you've actually covered some of those. As we're growing, Colonel, as a restaurant group, I think the culture of our organization has become so much more important than when we were just a small independently run operation, and I was there myself, very hands-on. But as we grow, and I think we're trying to instill many different facets into our culture as I learn on a day-to-day basis, and as you work with more competent professionals, you kind of have different characteristics to kind of deal with, and our company values have to. And one of the things that I was going to ask, in terms of your leadership values that you have, do you have a set of values that are there for you to be able to try and instill within your organization, and how do you go about doing that?
So good question. So the army has its set of values. We've referred to them as sea drills, and that's courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity, loyalty, and selfless commitment. And those are the values that we expect all in the army to use to guide their day-to-day activity. There's another aspect of the army which has really helped, as I've got to understand it and really dig into it, I've really found it valuable, and that is the idea of our leadership styles. And we have an approved leadership style, which is basically a transformational leadership style, which is almost diametrically opposed to the transactional leadership style, which can be unhelpful. So through using the Army's values and having explored that transformational leadership style, those are the things that have helped me in terms of working out how to approach, and in this current challenge, how to approach forming a new headquarters. So some of the things that we've done is we've tried to work out what it is that we are here for, not the mumbo jumbo that the army tends to wheel out in phrases that just don't mean anything. And as I said previously, I've boiled that down to the purpose. Our purpose is to make the military community in the North the best it can be. And we've also tried to generate an identity that people who are now coming to work for us can look at and see and recognize that their efforts will contribute to the strength of that identity and brand. So we've gone to quite deep efforts to provide a badge that links to the north of England. And our badge and identity revolves around the Merlin, which is long associated with the military in the Northeast especially, but the Merlin is resident throughout the North. And it's a bird of prey which has this behavioral characteristic of being very tolerant and very patient, but when it needs to, it is ferocious and it gets the job done. And we'd like to build our identity around that. And so Amma will see when we go down to the event today, you'll see quite a lot of that branding around, because I want the people that are new to the organization to look at it and understand what we represent, and using the values that I described, and hopefully under a leadership style through my team, which reflects this transformational approach, they'll buy into it, they'll recognize what we're trying to do, and we'll achieve some real momentum. And that's my hope anyway.
Brilliant.
Really
and I suppose, Jaff, what could we learn those analogies, as in choosing something that is relevant and making it a bit more understood. I was personally unfamiliar with the Merlin, but
I like
the
the
I'll be very familiar before the end of the day.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I think what I've taken from Colonel is just the fact that there's a purpose, and how an individual can identify themselves with a particular purpose that the army has or that particular organization has. And and being able to buy into it. And if you can buy into the purpose and then you identify with it, and you can live and breathe what the purpose is, and ultimately, if you can identify that there's that self-development at the end of it all, if that's your choosing career path for the next 5 years or 10 years, or maybe it may not be, but at least you are taking a lot of great kind of traits from being in that position and going through that training. So I think I guess it's being able to, as an employer, realizing that we always feel that when you're looking at cadets and stuff, that they've got an extra level of discipline and organization and a better understanding than what the average youngster would have when they just come out of school, because they haven't had that grounding at school. So I think those type of things do make a difference as an employer. But I guess for us, it's a matter of maybe there isn't that understanding from the average employer that if you were to bring in somebody who's got an association with the army, you're going to get all of these extra additional values into your organization. So maybe if that was finding ways of, and probably Amar's would be a great caveat for that, but it's finding ways of sharing that information to the average employer on the high street, wherever you want to say, so that's definitely a benefit to the company, and that would make the operation a lot easier.
So I think that's a really good point, Jeff, a really, really good point. And part of what we do, and again, in conjunction with our partners called the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, is we do quite a lot of what's termed employer engagement to explain to employers the benefits of primarily of employing reserves, because a reserve soldier we can only employ for about 40 days a year. So he or she has to have a full-time job as well. And of course, if that individual is kind of being shared between us, the Army, and the employer, we've got to explain to the employer how that works and what the values and the benefits are, and make sure everything is constructive. So there are quite a lot of programs that we are involved in that try to help demonstrate that to employers. And certainly we'd be more than happy to highlight them to yourself and through AMA if that is of value.
And it most definitely is. I mean, we're incredibly fortunate to have Andy Black as not just an associate and a partner who's helped bring so many community members together, and he's hiding in the background. You've probably seen him ducking around somewhere in our screens. But things like, Jeff, when you signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant, how do we bring that to life? As an opportunity as a cadet. That was my first engagement into our armed forces, and I loved it. It definitely developed who I am and developed those softer skills and that discipline and all of those things that as employers, but also as a young person, you may not get the opportunity to do so now. So things like the cadet apprenticeship pathway that we developed, the Armed Forces Covenant, we signed up a dozen employers a couple of weeks back in Ponteland. There's a whole range of opportunities, and I think picking up on what Colonel Peter has just mentioned, I think bringing the whole of the North together can only help amplify those opportunities, because historically there's been a North-South divide, more broadly speaking, and we've seen the power of partnerships through the Northern Powerhouse partnerships from a business perspective, but now seeing this coming to life from a military point of view, I think fundamentally brings the community together. So what does success look like, Colonel Peter? Because I'm conscious of time and you've got to teleport out of here in a couple of minutes. So what does success look like?
Well, I think we can measure that on a number of levels, really. I think the first thing is that success would be the parts of the army in the north that have a job to do in going overseas and when necessary and defeating the king's enemies. We would want to make sure that they are in absolutely the best condition they can be, well recruited, well trained, living in good barracks with good facilities and established stable connections with their local communities, who understand them and can support them and can support their families when they're deployed. I think that would be quite a good marker. And then there are a whole number of other things beneath that. We support military charities who provide that special support to those that need it, whether they be soldiers or families, and all a whole host of supporting elements which we just look to network in more closely and make sure that they can continue to deliver for our service community.
Brilliant. And what are you hoping to get out of today?
Well, today I mean, this is an ideal opportunity for today. It's just letting people know that Headquarters North is open for business. Putting the Merlin out there, you'll see that on all our flags and stuff. We might even have a pen with it on for you downstairs.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Yeah, it's just an opportunity both to recognise that our partner organisation here in Catterick, which is called 4 Brigade or 4 Light Brigade Combat Team, they are now going in a certain path, which is preparing themselves when necessary to be able to defeat the King's enemies. And we as Headquarters North are now open for business right across the North with a view to making the military community in the North the best it can be.
Excellent. Well, we wish you all the best. I'm excited to come and experience both the Merlin promotion, also the launch of HQ North. I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't doubt it's, sort of any change brings its own challenges, but bringing you under your leadership, and you've demonstrated and highlighted that. I was incredibly impressed that you rolled off the values and everything else. I don't know why I wouldn't, but being able to not only share them but demonstrate them through your 30-year career. So I'd like to personally thank you for your service. We don't do that enough, and I think the more that we can do around promoting the opportunities, the wonderful people in our armed forces, the more incumbent it is on us to develop those relationships and encourage other members of all communities to come together and support the tremendous job that you do. So on behalf of Spice FM, Asian Business Connections, and us, thank you ever so much.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. It's good to see you and
you
good
too.
to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there we have Colonel Peter now shooting off.